The Richard Young Gallery is excited to present Diego Portuondo's first solo show in the UK, Superimposed. And we're lucky enough to have him here to have an informal chat about his work and his inspiration behind both of the series, Modern Masters and O Paris.
My mother has been living in Ibiza since the early 80s, and I've always seen these churches since I was little. It was a kind of blank canvas for something else, because I always liked to superimpose one picture with another, and I thought that the churches were a perfect blank canvas to portray a new concept and a new idea. And I came across the idea of the Modern Masters because it's the art collection that I dreamed to have. And I turned these Modern Masters into graffiti artists. Since the 12th, 13th century, artists have always painted the inside of churches, and I found the concept of turning this inside out and letting the artists be the painters of the outside of the churches, the facades, and turning it a completely different concept, but at the same time maintaining the idea that the churches could commission these artists, which would be an amazing idea if it actually could have happened.
What I find quite fascinating about this series is that you wouldn't necessarily know that the buildings were churches until you read about it or heard you talk about it. Is this deliberate?
This is deliberate. I didn't want to have the essence of any religion portrayed in the pictures, because I think it would have harmed the whole aesthetics of the series. There's no need to have any symbols or signs of Christianity, which is what they are, they're Catholic churches, because it's more of an aesthetic series, I think, and I didn't want to mix it with any kind of religion or politics or anything that could be slightly controversial. I never wanted to use any pictures. Well, there are a couple of pictures that are too iconic of each of the painters. There is the Magritte, which is the eye, which is a very famous painting, but the Picasso has been so reproduced that I wanted to go for something more subtle and something which is closer to my heart, something that is closer to my tastes in art, as if it were my own art collection, as I said before. And early Picasso, the early Cubism, is my favourite period of his.
So Diego, it's quite, they're very realistic, and people come in and say, has the artist painted on the buildings? I mean, you've really achieved something quite technically advanced with these photographs. Can you talk a little bit about how you actually did them?
Well, the pictures is, first of all, is the picture of the architecture, the pictures of the churches, which are worked on the framing and the contrast and the actual, very much concentrating on the details of the buildings and the quality of the wall and the textures of the wall. And then a photograph picture of each of the paintings is then superimposed and cut out to make it look like it's actually painted on the walls through a series of blending and other Photoshop tools that make it look very realistic, like removing the whites in the paintings to reveal the actual white of the church, so it seems like the paintings are actually painted on the walls. I've always played with the idea of superimposing two images or two negatives, and with this day and age, having Photoshop, I think it would be silly not to use the tools that we have, especially to take concepts further than you could otherwise. Paris. Well, I lived in Paris for a span of 6 years after doing my studies in London with photography and assisting fashion photographers here in London. When I moved to Paris, I was immediately taken by the architecture and the grandeur of all the buildings and monuments. And I know something that's been photographed over and over, and it will be photographed over and over, but I wanted to photograph it in a different way, a way that portrayed my feelings about the city. It's a beautiful city and no one can take it away, but it also can be a hard city to live in, thus the moody feeling in the picture. It's a cataclysmic feel of the city where people are not portrayed in the pictures, and neither is any modern sign of cars, street signs. And I think they can determine the period of the pictures. They could be taken in the 18th century, or they could be taken in the 23rd century after the nuclear war. I could have done a series of hundreds of pictures because it's slaved with incredible buildings, incredible monuments, incredible everything. But I kind of handpicked my favourites through going. I photographed a lot of them, but also the favourite images, how they came out after I photographed them. For instance, that one over there, the large Eiffel Tower one, was actually the first picture I did in the series, and actually it stayed being a picture by itself without being part of the series for about a year. I created that picture, and then a year later I came back to finish the series. It was the view from my apartment in Paris.
Oh, wow.
I just bought my new camera, a new Hasselblad, and I was playing around with taking pictures of Paris from the window, and I started playing with that picture, and that's where the whole concept and idea began. I used to shoot everything on film, Hasselblad and media, but now with modern technology I've moved on to digital Hasselblad, which lets you work. The quality, I would say, is not you don't lose any quality compared to film camera, but the way of working becomes much quicker, and you can process your ideas a lot quicker, and you can work on them a lot quicker, and you know, it lets you evolve the ideas. Yeah. I say with my photography, I would say I'm more inspired by photo montage of the 1920s, 30s, such as Man Ray, moholy-nagy, photographers like that. Or also surrealist painters, which I've always been very interested in.